Does what's on your Pinterest profile really matter? Having a properly optimized Pinterest profile is so much more than creating an account and just putting up a photo. The pictures you use, the graphics you create, and the descriptions that you create for your boards and for your pins matter. Each piece works together cohesively to optimize your profile and to signal to the algorithm that your content is worth paying attention to. In this second episode of our 4-part series, Samantha and I discuss how to optimize your profile and then how to use keywords to target your content very specifically to reach your ideal client and your ideal listener. We also touch on how to write optimized show notes and why that's so important for your website SEO and also for your Pinterest SEO. Now, before we get into the episode, let me tell you a little bit about Sam. Samantha Roller is a Pinterest marketing and online marketing VA. Since 2015, she's worked her way up from basic admin and social media management roles for brick and mortars to working with multiple 6-figure businesses to grow and streamline their funnels. Samantha believes that anyone can utilize the power of Pinterest marketing, email funnels, and a simple opt-in to attract and convert ideal customers and clients, promote podcasts and YouTube channels, and ultimately build a stream of new audience members to nurture. Before we get into this episode with Sam, I want to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Share it with someone, another podcaster that you know needs to hear this message right now. And why not share the episode on social media? Let us know that you're listening. Tag us both. Both of our handles are in the show notes. We want to know that you're listening. Want to know what you're loving from this conversation. And if you want to go a little deeper and you want a little bit more, feel free to join us over on Patreon. Let's get into this conversation. Sam, thank you for joining me for episode 2 in our Pinterest series. I'm so excited to have you.
I am too. I'm really having a lot of fun diving into all this with you.
I know, me too. And we're talking in this episode about 4 ways that you can optimize your Pinterest profile. Before we dive into the 4 ways, we're first going to talk about how Pinterest works as a search engine. So we talked a little bit about it in the very first episode, kind of setting up why people should use Pinterest in their as their marketing strategy or as part of their marketing strategy. But now I really want to dive into why and how it works as a search engine, similar to Google, as you mentioned in the last episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first thing is you have a home feed and a search feed. And what's really important to know from a marketing perspective is how those 2 feeds work to your advantage. So the home feed is, and we did tap into this in the last episode, but that is when people search for something, Pinterest remembers that and they go, okay, if you liked this, then you're also going to like this. And so, for example, if they are looking for something related to podcasting or related to a specific type of podcast, you are more likely to rank for those search terms as well, or for that person, even if it's not necessarily for your podcast specifically. So that's where we tap into keywords and how we use them strategically on Pinterest to be able to tap into different people's audiences. So that's just for the home feed. For the search feed, this is more direct. So someone is going to the search bar and they're looking for something very specific. And just like on Google, you'll get more words pop up as you type something in. So if you type in how to, Pinterest will give you a suggestion of words where you can continue to search for more specific things. And this is based on traffic going to those specific keywords. So the top one that it comes up to, how to XYZ, whatever comes up first, that is what people are searching for the most on Pinterest right now. And so they're giving you that suggestion. And when you click on that specific keyword, a keyword phrase, click enter, and you see all the pins that pop up. The very top pins are the most popular pins forever on Pinterest. This is not recent keyword research where when you type in that the words at the top and you press enter and you see the keywords pop up, that is not necessarily over the time, that Pinterest has been around, right? That's not forever. That is just that's what's trending right now. Whereas when you search for it, when you click enter and you see all the pins, that's different. The pins can be years old that rank at the top.
Okay.
This is why there are multiple ways to get someone's attention and to get more traffic to your profile, to your pins using keywords, because there are different timelines happening when it comes to keywords on Pinterest. This is why, whether you're new to Pinterest or you've been around for a while, as long as you're consistent, this is where the consistency part comes in. As long as you're consistent, you have multiple opportunities to get in front of a pinner.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about keywords because I feel like they're so closely tied to just how the search engine works on its own. Before you dive into how keywords work, or maybe we should dive into this first, but I'm just so curious. Are keywords the same way? Maybe this is a little bit more into the optimization side of the profile, but are keywords similar to when you're doing a podcast, for example, how you want to kind of embed your keywords into your titles, into your descriptions, and that kind of stuff? Or are you using physical, like actual hashtags?
We do not use hashtags on Pinterest. It's
Okay.
exactly the same as optimizing your titles and descriptions for a podcast episode, for your podcast in general. When you want to rank for those terms, you're thinking of Google, right? You're thinking of, okay, if someone's searching for me online, how are they going to find me? It's the exact same thing for Pinterest. So we don't use Pinterest kind of experimented with hashtags for a while. And there is this belief by a lot of content creators still to this day that you can use hashtags. I'm not saying that you can't use it into your description, but one, it's not clickable. And two, Pinterest found that users do not use hashtags. They
Right.
tried it, it did not work. And they still saw that the same thing was consistent for how people use Google. They're just searching for keywords and terms.
Okay. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I
Mhm.
used to use I well, used to as from about 5 minutes ago, use hashtags on Pinterest. I will not be using hashtags on Pinterest anymore. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's talk about the actual way and method that keywords work. I know they're similar to when you're searching for a term. So let's talk about really quick when you're typing something into the search bar, those options that come up. Those are um those different options are what people are searching. Is it always the same for everyone? Does that make sense? Like when you're typing something in, is it always the same for everyone? Those specific phrases and sentences, like do they come up the same way for everybody?
Yeah, for the most part, I think the
Okay.
biggest difference that we have seen is from other countries, not
Mm,
necessarily like Canada or Mexico. You'll see a lot of consistencies in the North American region, but other countries could actually be slightly different. European countries are more consistent with North American search terms. But you'll find smaller countries might actually have different things going on with their algorithms, and that's just a matter of what is available in that country based on Pinterest user terms and legal stuff. So that's a little different. But for the most part, people who are more naturally engaging with Pinterest, which are larger countries, will be fairly consistent.
okay, that makes a lot of sense. So then in
Mhm.
that case, how do keywords work? Take it away.
Yeah. So there are keywords.
Where to
It's
begin?
all Pinterest, right? It's all that Pinterest is based on, right? Just like with Google, and just like you had said about, okay, I know that I'm going to title my podcast episode, or I'm going to label my podcast, I'm going to write the descriptions based on those keywords, based on what people I want to rank for, let's say on Google. It's this exact same premise for Pinterest. So you really want to tap into, like we had said in the last episode, who is your target audience? Who do you want to actually listen to your podcasts? And this is a big part of any marketing strategy, which is is knowing them as
Yeah.
people. What are their interests? What are they more likely to engage with online? This is a really important part of any marketing strategy. I don't care what platform you're on. If you don't have this down packed, then do this first and really dive deep into, okay, why would someone want to engage with this pin? Why would someone want to engage with my profile on Pinterest? Why would someone choose to, when they're searching for a podcast or a specific type of information and they see my pin come up along with all of these other pins, why are they going to choose mine? What's going to stand out keyword wise?
Right.
What am I specifically tapping into? And so this is where we talk about, when you're using keywords, it's both based on what people have been searching for on Pinterest. So that's where we start with. obviously, what are people searching for? What pins are ranking and why in my niche, in my field? And then you also base it on, okay, on my other platforms, my email list, or people I'm just engaging with online, the questions they ask me, why is that relevant to them? And how can I actually bring that information onto Pinterest as well? So often these are really engaging topics. This is, okay, if I have a podcast episode on podcasting, okay, how to start a podcast, that's a massive keyword search term on
Yeah.
Pinterest. And you can type it in, how to start a podcast, and you'll see all these pins come up. And you can look at those pins and go, okay, what are the similarities here? These are the top ranking pins at the very top of this search term. So why are they ranking so high? These pins could be years old.
Right.
Now, the funny thing about specific niches are that some will consistently bring newer content to the forefront, and that has more to do with tech and things that you need to be more, you need more modern answers, right? So this is a really good little technique for anyone who's in that kind of field, who has something that you need, it needs to be updated, right? The newest information is going to be the best information for that audience member. Using the year on the pin is really effective.
Oh, okay. So would you
Yeah.
go back and change your pin every year?
Nope, you would make a new one.
Oh, okay. So it could it be the exact same thing? I mean,
Yeah, it could be
obviously
the
you would
exact
tweak it a
same.
little bit, but you could
Yeah.
essentially put the same
Yeah.
thing.
So let's say that you have a blog post that you decide to, this would actually be really effective for you. So I'll just use you. Um,
Okay.
let's say a long-standing blog post where we're constantly and consistently updating the tech that makes sense for a podcast, the things, different strategies for growing a podcast. Let's say it's a really bulky, SEO friendly blog post that we consistently update. We can consistently make new pins every single year, every
Mm,
single, couple of months, to put out to Pinterest to consistently bring in new traffic, because every month, every year, the requirements around podcasting, they're going to change, right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
if that's the type of niche you're in, and the thing is, even though a pin can last for a really long time on Pinterest and can rank at the top, it doesn't mean that you can't update things. It doesn't mean that you can't make changes. Now, we don't ever go back and delete pins or change pins. We don't do that. Instead, we focus on creating new content and what we can make going forward. It's not like where you're on Instagram and you're archiving old posts. On Pinterest, that would take forever. It's not worth your time, trust me. Just focus on making new content that is relevant to your audience and putting it out there.
Okay. This is really wonderful. I'm loving all of these tips. I think they're super helpful. And one of the things that comes to mind, even though it's not overly relevant to, it kind of is to what we're talking about right now. I'm curious, when you're creating a blog page of any kind, whether it's a regular blog or a show notes page, for example, are there specific things that should be on that page that will help your Pinterest ranking or, SEO friendliness or searchability on the back
Yeah.
end, or are they kind of separate?
Well, no. So you can, I guess you could have like a separate show page on your website and then have a blog as well where you dive deep into this topic. And it's not necessarily like, hey, we talked about this on the podcast. You're maybe the media player's not in there. And it's
Right.
just a separate topic. You could do that. But if you don't want to put the time and effort into that and you're like, you know what, I just want to expand on the episode itself, I would do that. I wouldn't necessarily only put show notes. If you really want to rank for these things and you want it to be really effective, not just for Pinterest, but for Google as well, go ahead and put the time in to either have a completely separate blog post tapping into whatever topic on the podcast it was, or go ahead and on that show notes page, put a little more detail. I mean, we've seen these pages before where it breaks down a few headlines, and you have a couple of like a paragraph or two under each one about what each section of the podcast episode was about.
Yeah.
That also helps you rank as well. So you don't necessarily, and you don't necessarily need to do this for every podcast episode, because we know that not every podcast episode is necessarily like deserving of a whole blog post. It might not be that type of topic. It
That's
might be
right.
more conversational, or but having even some details about what happens within the podcast episodes, like skimming notes that you
Hmm.
can write out for someone if they can't listen to it right then or they just prefer that. But above all else, this does actually help you rank on different search engines as well, both Pinterest and Google. So, for example, if you have the show notes written out, or you have this mini blog post, let's say, written out, it's not a full blog post. When you're creating pins, you could create one pin that has the title of the podcast episode, and you can pin that. But you could also have a pin that has one of the headlines that you've written that's keyword based.
Oh,
You could
okay.
do a pin with, you could do 3 or 4 pins with different headlines. See which one performs better. See which one gets more engagement.
Hmm.
You can use different titles and descriptions, not necessarily descriptions, but different titles on your pins and on the pin graphic to see, okay, what words are more engaging? What is more effective to get my audience to actually hop onto this page and listen?
I love that. I think that's so key because sometimes I see show notes that's just 2 lines. You know what I mean? Like 2
Mm-hmm.
sentences, and it's kind of like how what's the purpose of that? You know what I mean? You need
Yep.
to have a little bit of like more meat in there. And so I try and always write show notes for myself and for my clients that have a little bit more context to them. They probably could be a little bit longer, like they probably could have a little bit more, in-depthness to them, if you will, but I think when I look at show notes, I've always looked at it through the lens of it kind of is this mini blog that you want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure people understand what they're getting themselves into, what the episode is about, who the person, the guest is, all that kind of stuff. Realizing that all of those things are searchable, right? Especially guest names are
Mm-hmm.
searchable, topics, names of books, and creating, um, podcast episode titles that have those keywords as well. There's so many different resources that you can go to. Answer the Public is one of them to see what people are searching and how they're searching for it. And I think that this is so key. Would you use or suggest something like this as well for the Pinterest side when you're creating pins? Like, would a website like Answer the Public work for Pinterest, or is there a way to find those keywords? What are those keywords and how do they rank?
Yeah. So it's all about making sure that those keywords are relevant. And that's at the end of the day, like that's just what matters. If
Yeah.
you can make sure that the show notes, because we are talking about podcasts specifically, when you're creating show notes, again, I necessarily think that the actual description needs to be super long for like the actual episode notes where
Yeah.
like you would see it on like the player, but have a dedicated page on your website.
Yes. Yes.
Have a
I
dedicated page.
honestly, for so many reasons. For A, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
backlink on Pinterest, but also B, just to have a landing page for people to be able to search when they're looking for that specific topic with your guests. If you don't have,
Exactly.
it's such a missed opportunity to not have a blog
Yes.
landing page for your
Because
website.
someone might not come across your podcast episode because they're looking for a podcast to listen to.
Yeah,
It could be that they're searching for a specific topic or a
exactly.
specific phrase, and you happen to be ranking for that. You happen, whether it's on Pinterest or Google or wherever, you have an opportunity to come up in someone's spotlight that has nothing to do with actually searching for a podcast. Happy accidents, right? But it's not an accident at all because you're purposely putting that out there and putting the effort into, okay, I have another place that people can find me.
I love that. I think that is so genius. And it's just another way to add a different level of connection to your podcast for other people who are listening, exactly like you said, who may not be searching for this podcast specifically, but they are searching for X, Y, and Z expert or X, Y, and Z guest, or even X, Y, and Z topic, whatever that topic is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Even let's take this podcast episode, for example. People may not be searching for this podcast, but they may want to know how do keywords work as it relates to podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole searchable term in and of itself. I mean, I would
Yep.
assume maybe people would type it like that. I don't know, but I digress. Type it in that way so it starts to rank. No, I'm just kidding. Recording. So, Sam, 4 tips to optimizing your profile.
Yeah. So first we want to start with our bio and our title and our profile. So just like we have everything's keyword based, everything on your profile is searchable. And so people can search for profiles separately, but they can also search for boards and pins. So it's really important to get your profile optimized completely. And that means your title and bio should reflect who you are, your company name, your podcast name, what you do, and who you want to target. So this is your main line. So who you are, or your name or your business name. And then in the description of your profile, they've actually expanded the amount of words that you can actually write in your profile. So you can be really specific with what you do, who you serve, just like you would, almost like you're writing out a bio for, like, say, your website. Not quite as dense, but a decent paragraph, putting in like, okay, this is exactly who I help. This is exactly what I do, who I want my audience, who I want to tap into for my audience to listen to my podcast. Or if you have a business related to your podcast, obviously mention that as well. Anything that you're going to be pinning on your profile should be related back into your profile bio, basically. And so you can kind of think as your bio as the beginning of
We have to caveat, and I'm just gonna leave this in the recording. We have to caveat. Your dog is behind your screen, and he really wants to come and say hello, which is what you're hearing in the microphone. Just so you all know, it's not Sam's stomach.
Oh my goodness,
it's her dog.
Alice. Okay.
Oh, so cute.
He's the biggest baby.
I love dogs. I mean, if you're listening and you follow me on social media, my dog is my entire life. So, we love dogs around here.
Yes, we do. He is my work buddy, so he keeps me company.
I love that. Okay, next piece of optimization.
Yeah. So then we're going to go into our header. So you can put a photo behind your profile. And a lot of people don't normally use that or optimize it, but this is a really good opportunity to create brand recognition. So you could use your logo, your colors, anything specific that you want related to you as a brand. Use that. So that could be your logo or photos of you, but it can also be an opportunity to mention an opt-in you have, kind of like a Facebook cover that you might see in a group, kind of a similar concept. So this can also be a really effective thing, because as we're using video content and being more engaging, trying to get people to actually go to a Pinterest profile and engage and follow, someone would see that header and go, oh, she has an opt-in on, the best podcast equipment. So I am going to go into the link in her profile, which should also be connected in your settings, and go opt in and download that. And it's another really great way to just get people to engage with your actual website. After that, you would want to then go into your boards and your board descriptions. So there is no special number for how many boards to have, especially when you're starting out. If you already have boards in place, let's say you have a lot of personal boards, just archive them. You don't have to delete them. You don't have to get rid of all the things you've saved if they're not related to your podcast or your business. Just archive them, or private them so that people can't see them, and you can continue using them just like you normally would. Just make sure that the public boards are related to, again, going back to what you talked about in your bio. So what do you do? Who do you serve? And these boards should be a little more specific than just like one word. So for example, if you have...
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, because a lot of the times people will just be like makeup or quotes or whatever. Yeah. I don't know why I chose makeup, because I don't even really wear a lot of makeup, but here we are.
When it's a personal account, I think we don't think about those things. We title them based on what we relate to, right? As a business, you have to think of it a little differently. How is Pinterest going to know what this board is about and who to serve the pins on it to? Believe it or not, your board matters. So if you create a board about how to start a podcast and you pin puppies to it, Pinterest is going to be real confused. They're not going to know who to serve this to, because they're like, that doesn't make any sense. So when you're titling your boards, think about the content you're actually going to be pinning. It's always nice to have a brand board. So that's kind of every pin can kind of go to this board, your podcast board, a specific one where all your episodes go to. But then you want some really specific boards on specific topics. So podcast equipment, how to start a podcast, podcasting for entrepreneurs or something along those lines, podcasts, parenting podcast or anything like that. You want to be kind of specific. And if you have expanded topics, so you have a business related to your podcast, or you dive into multiple topics, those should be the titles of your boards. And the pins should obviously be related to that topic. You don't really need a pin to be able to go to schedule to like two or three boards. You don't need a high volume of pins. Thankfully, we'll dive into that later. But when you are writing the descriptions, it's pretty much the same thing where you are describing what's going to be on that board, what pins are going to be on that board, what are they about, and why do people want to actually click on your pins? Why do they want to engage with this board? So get really specific with that. Use some keywords, no hashtags, no keyword stuffing. It's not effective anymore. Write like you're talking to a person. Write a few sentences about what the board's about. And then the same thing goes with your pins. So similar concept for titles and descriptions as far as using the keywords. Be really specific about what the pin's about. You can use the same link and have multiple pin images and multiple titles to play with to see what people engage with. But on that topic with a pin, there's actually 3 pieces of keywords, like keyword locations. That's the title, the description, and the pin graphic itself. So a lot of times we put text overlay on graphics, right? That should include some keywords. At least one. So about the main topic. And like I said, you can use different titles on these pins for the actual pin itself, like in the title when you're creating the pin. But when you're writing text overlay on the pin, make it make sense. Make it make sense. Make it so that when someone reads that pin, they haven't even looked at the title. They have not read the description yet, because the first thing that someone sees is the image. They don't immediately pop down to see what the title is and then look at the pin. They see the pin first. Right. You want to immediately grab their attention, and you want them to know exactly what that pin, if they click on it, where they're going to go and what it's going to tell them and what it's going to deliver them.
Okay. Do you recommend having the same title on your graphic as the title that you're using on your post, or does that not really matter?
It doesn't really matter. You definitely can. You can vary it up. Again, if, like I said before, if you have, let's say, a blog post with multiple headlines, try out the different headlines, even if the graphic says something different, as long as it's the same content. So the reason this is important is not just, obviously, we want to get a pinner's attention and we want it to relate to what they're actually searching for. But the other side of that is that Pinterest actually has bugs that crawl your website. They see the pin, they see the pin title, the description, they see that they read the text overlay on that pin, and then they look at the link. And they go, does it make sense? And the spam filters that Pinterest have created over time have become very, very effective. They're very good at seeing if the information on the page is actually related to what you're saying it is.
Okay. Yeah. That's really interesting.
It is really interesting. And I mean, they've done this for so long that they're just getting better and better at delivering the content that people are actually searching for. So that's why they just want the user experience to be as specific and seamless as possible. So that's why they do it, and that's why it's effective.
I love that. That's so good, because it really ties all of the different pieces together. This ties in why exactly we need to understand what keywords we're using and being specific about them, but also how to apply them, which I love. Now, we're going to dive into our next episode in a second here. Again, if you're listening on Patreon, you already have access to the whole entire series. And if not, then you can wait until next week when it drops. Or if you're already listening and it's already live, then yay you. I love that for you. But we are in the next episode going to talk about the different types of content to create, the different types of pins to create. Now, with this in mind, is there anything else that you feel like is missing from this conversation today that we haven't touched on?
I don't think so. I think we dove pretty hard, and I feel like we're going to expand the things that I'm thinking of. I think we'll expand on in the next episode. So
amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on this episode with me.
Yeah, this is so much fun. I'm really enjoying it.
I know, me too. Okay, and thank you for listening into this episode. We will see you on the next one. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation today. I am so grateful that you've spent this time with us to learn about how to leverage Pinterest for your business, for your marketing, and for your podcast growth. If you would be so kind as to leave a rating and review of the show wherever you're listening, I would be most grateful. You can also watch the whole entire episode on YouTube so you can see us in real time. You can give me a follow or subscribe over there too. I wouldn't be mad at that. You can connect with Sam, grab all of her freebies and her downloads. The links are in the show notes. But let me tell you here, her website is samanthalind.co. Her Instagram is @SamanthaLynn_co. Her Pinterest link is in the show notes, and you can also get your free Pinterest workbook in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Again, I cannot wait to see you on the next one.